Man, we've made such a big deal about all the disappointment of missing out on all these bigs this offseason in the transfer portal. But what if we were wrong?
This is Tyler Hansbrough, and you're listening to Locked On Tar Heels.
You are Locked On Tar Heels, your daily podcast on the UNC Tar Heels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, what's up? It's Wednesday, October 23rd, 2024. Welcome into the Locked On Tar Heels podcast. It's the only daily North Carolina show out there. I'm your host, Isaac Shea, joined today by our good buddy, Coach Pack Kilby, and you're joining us at the place to get your Carolina content every single day. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks for making us your first listen or watch. Shout out to the everydayers, all the Locked On Tar Heels Discord members, and our great Locked On Tar Heels insiders. Let's get right into it. This episode's brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets. That's guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Pat Kilby, it is our last What If Wednesday of the offseason because next Wednesday, it's time for bold predictions. You better start cooking yours up. I want them to be so bold that they're ludicrous and no one will ever take them seriously. That's how absurd and out there they should be, Pat Kilby. Folks, we want you to be cooking up your bold predictions too, because baby, we want to hear them. But today it's What If Wednesday, where we have a nice little bucket with all these what if scenarios in here. We're going to pull them out one at a time and then answer them to the very best of our ability. Zero preparation at all. We've not thought about. No, I'm just kidding. Of course, we already know what they are. How else would we have the background on YouTube if we didn't already know what they were? Anyway, Pack, you ready to get into the first one?
I'm ready.
Okay, here we go. Let me shake up the bucket and see which one is going to be first today. All right, Pack, this one says, what if losing out on a traditional big in the portal is a blessing in disguise? One more time. What if losing out on a traditional big in the portal is a blessing in disguise? Pack, we've been all like, all off season long. We didn't get Umar Ballo. We didn't get Cliff Amore. We didn't get Jonas Adu. We didn't get, and now we're stuck with Jay Wash. Is there any world in which we were wrong?
Absolutely. And really, I mean, just having this conversation is crazy to think about because, you know, when you think of Carolina basketball, especially from the Roy Williams era on, you think of a traditional big man being in the post and kind of being an anchor down there. And this is really, I mean, the first time that we're not going to have that since Roy Williams became the head coach at Carolina, and maybe even a little before that. So this is going to be a totally different thing. And for all of us, it's been like almost a little bit of a panic mode because it's like we don't know, like I said, we don't know Carolina basketball without that. But truthfully, the more I think about it and the more I watch, like the exhibition with Memphis, and the more kind of that I hear about the program, the better I feel about it. And Jay Wash, I mean, like I said on previous episodes, and I'll say it again, I've been a doubter. Just with his injury prone, I didn't know if he was tough enough to bang down low. Didn't know how efficient he, truly would be as we stacked minutes on. And admittedly, it's early, but Jay Wash looked really good against Memphis. And
who has size and like girth?
Yeah, absolutely. And Ben Allen did some good things, and so that kind of reassured me as well. But really the key here is Jay Wash going to step up and fill that gap? And he's just not your prototypical traditional big. He's more of a stretch. He did finish around the rim some, but Hubert's called him the best big man shooter in the country, and so is he going to prove to be that? I don't know, but ultimately it could be a blessing in disguise because of his ability to stretch the floor with the guard play around him. We're going to be playing with more space than we've played in a long time. Essentially that lane, that post is going to be open, and it's going to be there for the taking for RJ and Elliot and Ian and Seth and so on and so forth. So it's going to be really interesting to see. But ultimately, as crazy as it sounds, it really might end up being a blessing in disguise.
Dude, that's so weird, Pat. And, I love being wrong when it means that the Tar Heels are going to be better than I thought, right? And so it's just like I cried and moaned and wept because I thought it was just like, oh my gosh, we're missing out on all these dudes. But legitimately, like I've never seen. Before we hopped on, folks, we're recording this on Tuesday night. The first NBA game of the season is going on as Pack and I are recording. It's the Celtics and the Knicks, and Reggie Miller was talking about like just how wildly different everything is right now. He was like, literally every possession, there's no one inside the 3-point line. Welcome to the modern NBA. And Pack, that's what Carolina could be. And if it's good enough for the world champions, why can't it be good enough for Carolina? I've never seen so much baby blue in the painted area because Mondo or Kennedy Meeks isn't down there swimming around waiting. And so like it really could be an opportunity to make things, as we've been joking about, and I think this is going to become a phrase you and I use a lot. We're going to try to make this kitten purr, Pack Hilby, and it's going to be a lot of fun. And here's the other thing. I think because of the mobility you get with a Jalen Washington, it really does unlock even more what the guards and wings are able to do. Because if he's down there clogging it up, then it doesn't allow Elliot to get to the rim or Drake or Seth. Good grief, using that athleticism to just attack. That's what we need to be doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do want to touch on this too, because a lot of our focus has been, what is it going to look like without a traditional big offensively? But I actually think, when you look at like Jonas Adu and some of the different guys we missed out on, we were thinking, catching lobs and rim protection.
Like Omori is a great example of that too.
Yes, absolutely. And so, while Jay Wash actually probably has always presented more offensively than some of the other guys that we targeted in the portal, I actually think I was impressed with what he did defensively. He held his own, in the Memphis exhibition, and he's got such good length. I think he's going to do really well at altering shots and getting his hand on some, blocking shots, and just disrupting. And so, when we kind of flip it over and we look at the defensive end, I actually think he's going to contribute a lot there too. And so I really feel good about what Jay Wash brings, and Vin Allen Lubin too, and possibly Tyson Claude and some of those guys, see what they can contribute. But specifically Jay Wash, I think he's going to bring a lot on both ends. That was more than I ever thought he was going to bring in the first place. So I'm very pleasantly surprised with that.
Now let's say something to be fair, Pack. It was one exhibition game at Memphis. We're going to need to see the consistency of that happening multiple times back to back to back, because it's got to be consistent. That's going to be the key. And I don't think we learn about that against Johnson C. Smith. I don't think we learn about that one. But I tell you what, 2 weeks from Friday night, when Carolina's in Lawrence, Kansas, we're going to find out a lot as he goes up against Hunter Dickinson and, the rest of Kansas's front court. That's where we're going to start learning. When you go to Maui, that's when we're really going to start learning what's happening. When we go up against Cliff Omori in Alabama in the ACC SEC Challenge, that's where we're going to learn. But that's also why I love this loaded non-conference slate, because it gets you ready for what you're going to have to do in the ACC version of things. And I think the other thing is with Jay Wash, what's nice about that is you don't need him to be 30 to 35 minutes a night. You need a solid 25 out of him. Like, that's the sweet spot for me for Jay Wash.
And the other thing to add here is we still have to remember we don't need Jay Wash to be dominant. We need him to break even with his matchup, or just not even break even, just even it out, or barely lose. Our front court, our back court is dominant. That it's the best, arguably the best backcourt in the country. I may be a little biased. I would call it the best backcourt in the country, given Seth Trimble's improvement. But
yes, that's a good point.
So we don't have to shoulder him with these heavy burdens of he's got to perform every single night. No, he really doesn't. If what he does against Memphis is what we end up getting consistently, we're going to be way better than we ever thought we were. But if we just get where we break even, we're still going to be really good. So Jay Wash is kind of in that sweet spot of, at least this season, he's not going to have to do too much or too little. He just needs to be solid.
That's right. And part of that includes getting out, hitting those shots from outside like you were talking about. And, we were mentioning the NBA where a lot of these bigs, traditional bigs, just get played off the court like in crunch time and literally are unplayable because of, switching and other things and athleticism. And if Jay Wash can use that side of his game to render his opponent, sterile, basically, awesome. And we'll take that. All right, Pack, we got more What If Wednesdays to get to. I think we're going to look at a little three-point shooting next. Is Carolina going to have some reversion, or could this be a ridiculously talented three-point shooting team? We'll take a look at that in just a second. Right after I tell you about LinkedIn, when you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality candidates that are right for the role. That's why you got to check out LinkedIn Jobs, which has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team, both faster and for free. What I love is that LinkedIn, it's not just some job board where you go hunting. They help you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else. Even folks who aren't actively searching for a new job, but they might be open to that perfect role if you put it in front of them. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't even visit the other job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. So hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. And they know that small businesses like yours are wearing so many hats, and you might not have the time or, frankly, the resources to be able to hire well. So they're trying to find ways all the time to make that process easier, like this brand new feature they recently launched where they help you write job descriptions to make the process, again, even more efficient for the over 2.5 million small businesses using LinkedIn to hire. So go ahead, post your job right now at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Again, that's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Okay, Pat Kilby, What If Wednesday? We had a nice little front court question there. Again, I really hope we're wrong. And I got to tell you, I'm going to put my hand up and say, I'm an idiot, but I'm so glad I'm an idiot. All right, Pat, here is our next question for today. And, this one comes from one of our Locked On insiders. This is Will Hager. And Will says this: what if the 24-25 team shoots at the same three-point percentage as the 22-23 team, which was 31.2%. Yikes. That's gross. Pack. Obviously, last year, a step back in the right direction. Last year, Carolina went up from, what did we say it was, 22-23 there from Will?
35.
31.2. And then last year, took a big fat jump back up to 35.9%, which was still just 77th in the country, but infinitely better. So, Pack, what if this year's team reverts back to 2 years ago? What is it going to mean for these Tar Heels?
Well, it's going to be a major setback. This team is specifically built for perimeter play, which is why we've talked so much about the small ball lineups and potentially playing three guards with kind of a more typical wing and Cade, Tyson, and then Jay Wash, and just filling it up from the perimeter, basically. And so basically what I guess where I'm going with this is this team is built for three-point shooting and perimeter play. And, if we shoot 31.2% from the three-point line, that's going to be tough to overcome because, we're already giving up a decent amount in size, potentially giving up some on the boards, potentially giving up some stuff defensively, just due to the lack of size that we have on the floor. Now, we'll have plenty of speed, but, teams that handle that, can they take advantage of that? And that could potentially set Carolina back. So if we don't shoot the ball well, that really puts us in a tough spot. And the thing is about this team, I don't foresee that. This team is probably the best shooting team that we've had since, what did we say when we talked about this before, 2019?
I think that 18-19 team, but what's funny, Pack? I went back and looked at it, and they shot just slightly better percentage-wise than last year's team, 36.2%. But this is the team, folks, that started kind of that It is honestly the last time Carolina played like, or kind of had a lineup like what we think they'll be this year. It was Kobe White at the 1, Kenny Williams at the 2, Cam Johnson at the 3, some guy named Luke at the 4, and Garrison Brooks at the 5.
Yeah. So
and bring in Nasir Little off the bench, which, he didn't offer much in the way of shooting, but
yeah. But that team, I mean, God, those first 3 that you rattled off there, Kobe, Kenny, and Cam, those guys.
And Luke. Let's not forget Luke in there.
And Luke, yeah, absolutely. And so this team is probably the most promising team since then. And in a lot of ways, I actually feel that this team maybe is more promising shooting the ball and better guard play than even that team in 2018-19. So I just feel like this team is going to be fine from the perimeter. But yeah, if we don't, if we regress and we go back to 22-23 year, we're going to be in a world of hurt. So yeah. I think kind of one of the must-haves from this team is obviously, not turning the ball over, not putting ourselves in a position where we have to guard more than we need to. But also we need to hit shots because the more that floor is stretched, the tougher we are to guard. And that's when we'll be at our best. So, if we regress, we're going to be in a world of hurt.
The interesting thing about that 18-19 team, Pack, I'm looking back at some of the individual numbers, is that was the year, remember that Kenny did not shoot well. He was 29.5%. Luke was 28.8%. Nasir was 26.9%. But you had Cam at 45.7%. Kobe had a better percentage than I thought, 35.3%. B-Rob on a smallish sample size was 46%. Even Leaky on an even smaller sample size, 41, 7th on a small sample size, 40. So while you had a couple higher volume guys not doing what you needed them to do, you had some of the lower volume guys making up for that, I think, a little bit. And so I think that's the way it is with this team too, is you need it from it cannot just be RJ, right? Like that's the thing. Who, by the way, I expect to finally get to 40% from 3 for the first time in his career. It's still wild to me that he's never done that. But it makes sense. 2 seasons ago, he had that index finger injury on his shooting hand. And then last year, we've talked about this, Pack, multiple times this offseason, but had he made just one of those 9 threes that he missed against Alabama, he would have been over 40%. So, there's that. I know we haven't seen good shooting yet from Cade Tyson in either the blue-white scrimmage or the charity exhibition. He's going to be fine, right? Like, I'm not worried about that. And so I honestly don't think that RJ or Cade are the key to this team. Pack, I think it falls into what the outside shooting is like from maybe your 3rd through 6th rated 3-point shooter. So meaning, what is the true growth for Elliot? What does Seth do? What does Jalen Washington do? And Ian probably, I think, would be the other. So I really think a lot of it's going to be dependent on what those 4 do and if Drake's able to hit a couple as well. I think that's going to tell the story of this team's 3-point shooting. What do you think, Pack?
No, I absolutely agree. And specifically, I want to harp on Elliot Cadeau and Ian Jackson. I really think those 2 are going to play a major piece in how well we shoot the ball. Obviously, we've heard of Elliot's improvement, and we saw it a little bit against Memphis. It's kind of like the J-Wash thing. We need to see it a little bit more. But definitely looks like he's taking strides in the right direction. And then Ian has been, obviously this highly touted scorer, but even he has looked a little inefficient in the blue-white and the Memphis game. So if those 2 guys can consistently knock down shots, or even just, both of those guys get in the 30 percentile range there, that will make me feel okay about them. And then I trust the other guys enough to bring us along. So it's definitely going to be interesting. I think this team has a ton of potential to fill it up from the perimeter. But like you said, there are still some question marks.
Yeah, for sure. So, Pack, let's end this what if with this question. And I'd like us to both answer it, unless you say something and it's the exact answer I'm looking for. What for you is the threshold from the 3-point line that Carolina needs to be at for you to feel like they can get, not even necessarily like ceiling, ceiling would be like 38% as a team or whatever. But what is like, man, I think this is kind of the goal that we're shooting for, to be in good shape.
35%.
Okay.
I think if we shoot 35%, I like our chances in most every game, from the 3-point line. And, anything above that, obviously just feel even better about it. And I think, too, that 35% is more than doable.
Yeah. I mean, that's lower than last year.
Right. Yeah. So it's doable. And we can afford – this team is good enough that we can afford to not shoot, great every night. I think that we're going to be pretty good at getting to the rim. I think we're going to be pretty good free throw shooters. I think we're going to get points in transition. There's other ways to score. I just know that when we're hitting from the perimeter, that's when we're going to be at our best. And so if we're 35% or better, I feel really good about it.
Yeah, I was going to go 36, so 1 percentage point higher, just to get up over that threshold of last year. I'd like to see it just take another uptick from where things were last year, but I think that'll be in good shape. And speaking of which, yeah, I'd like to see that free throw shooting continue as well, because Carolina's been great from the stripe the last several years. Big part of it last year was that, man, Armando Bacot, what a jump he took at the free throw line. Can we just remember that, Pat? Like, unreal. Kudos to you, number 5, for that jump you took last year. All right, Pat Kilby, we got one more what if question. And, the ones we're going to go back to the front court for this one. And I think we're going to have to knock on wood a little bit because we don't want to jinx any injuries. But it's a what if question about that. And we'll get to it in just a second. Right after I tell you about FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, you can view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You're going to get started with $200 in bonus bets. That's guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Hey, Pat, how about some odds to reach the Final Four? I'm a little disgruntled with FanDuel. You know why? Because Carolina's been falling in these Final Four odds lately, and Duke's still sitting there at #1. I've been throwing some Duke shade on the show lately. Man, we should have a segment called Throwing Shade. Oh my word, this is revolutionary. Duke leads the way at +175. Kansas and Houston next at +190. UConn +210, Alabama +270, Iowa State +330, Auburn and Gonzaga at +420, and then Carolina and, funnily enough, Arizona tied at +500. So if you think that's some good odds on Carolina, man, I think that might be good. If you think they're Final Four worthy, go get in on that, man. And you can check it all out at FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. Ooh, Pat Kilby, it is our last What If Wednesday question of the offseason. Because again, next week, we will go to our bold predictions, where this one comes from insider Edward Inslee. Ed, thank you so much for your What If question. And Ed, Pat Kilby, says this: what if 1 or 2 front court players go down with an injury? One of my big worries is being so thin there. That's an interesting question from Ed, because Pac, if we're being honest, I think the backcourt can absorb an injury or two better than can the front court. So Pat Kilby, what if 1 or 2 of our front court players go down with an injury?
Yeah, so this is an interesting question, because on one hand, it's like what you just said. The backcourt is a lot deeper, and they can withstand an injury or two. The front court, in theory, is very thin, not a ton of bodies there, and would be really tough if we, had a couple players go down, or even just one player go down for that matter.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, it's like the one thing this team can overcome is that, because in a lot of ways we were kind of already planning on not being our strongest in the post, right? Like we were kind of already thinking, we're not going to be a great rebounding team. We're not going to be throwing the ball to the post. Like, we don't lose anything from our identity if we lose, a big man to an injury. So we can still accomplish a lot, I think, even with a sustained injury to one of our post players. But, there is, eventually you're going to run into teams like a Kansas or potentially even a Duke that just has somebody down there that's overpowering, and there's not going to be a lot we can do about it. But for the most part, I think we can depend on our backcourt to carry us if we were to sustain an injury or two to the front court. And so I think that's kind of like I don't know, not catch-22, but there's two different ways you can look at it. But the positive is this team was never dependent upon that position. Yeah. Therefore, I don't think we lose any of our identity if that happens, but it will certainly be tough to overcome.
One of the factors for me, Pack, is the loss of Zayden High. Obviously, that takes a body out of the front court. I think, there were a lot of people, I think us included, that were curious to see what kind of sophomore leap he was going to make and how his motor and energy could be an impact in the front court. We don't have that. Thank goodness Ty Claude had committed just, about 2 weeks before that news came out. And so that helps a lot. I think another factor in this, Pack, is if there is a front court injury, it matters in a big way who it is. Because if it's Jalen Washington, that's extremely different than if it's James Brown, for example. Because I think as we look at it right now, J-Wash is your most dependable big, both in terms of production, athleticism, hopefully mobility, three-point shooting, all of those things that you're thinking are going to be part of the unique identity of this team. And so obviously one of the specifics that we don't have in the question is who that front court player is. And I think that plays a major impact in how big a deal it is to lose a front court player.
Absolutely. Yeah. J-Wash is he's the one we don't want to lose. I mean, we don't want to lose any of them, but sure, we definitely don't want to lose J-Wash. And unfortunately, he's probably the most injury prone. Just given his history with his knees and stuff. And so it's actually a major concern of mine just because he's not carried a minute load like he's going to this year up to this point since he's overcome his injuries. And so it's something to keep our eye on to see how he handles that. Even if he's not being injured necessarily, that's a lot of wear and tear on your knees and can take its toll on you. So that's definitely something to keep our eye on. But yeah, I totally agree. Just obviously, J-Wash is very important to what we're going to be doing offensively and defensively, and he's the one that can be the most disruptive as far as guarding multiple positions, altering shots, pitching in on the glass. He just is going to be able to do a lot for us, and so if we were to lose him, that would be one of those ones that's like, man, I don't know if we can overcome that. But knock on wood, like you said, we're going to stay healthy, and we're not going to have to worry about this.
That's right. That's right. We got you, J-Wash. Do the work. Pack, we were talking about three-pointers in the last segment. As we had mentioned, the Knicks and Celtics are playing the first game of the NBA season as we record. That game just went final. You ready for this?
Yep.
The Celtics just tied a single-game NBA record for most three-pointers made with 29. And, oh, by the way, they did so while hitting 47.5% of it. It's not like they were inefficient with it. Who is that? Is that Larry Legend you're holding up there?
Oh, yeah.
Come on, baby. We got some Larry Legend in the house. The Indiana State Sycamore himself, Larry Bird. I mean, Pack, again, it's just another reminder of the different time, the different era that we're in. And so, I know we haven't even had a regular season game to see it happen, but kudos to Hubert Davis for being willing to say, hey, we're going to do things a little bit different this year. And some of it is just the personnel that we have, but we're going to see if we can ride it and make it work. And I'm excited about that. It's so different and it can be a little scary, but I think it's going to be fun. And I just can't wait to see kind of a different style. I'm buckled up for the fact that we're probably going to have to win like 100-98 unless the defense can just lock in or something, which who knows, but man, a lot of fun stuff ahead.
Absolutely. And, I want to add this. This doesn't really have anything to do with the what if, but it's going to be really fun. You talking about how, high scoring we're going to be. Like in coaching circles, I think Hubert has become a X's and O's wizard. A lot of people are like, man, this guy runs great stuff. And if you follow that type of stuff on Twitter, you see a lot of different basketball accounts posting different sets and stuff that Carolina runs. And he's just gotten really good. And now I'm super excited to watch what he does with this much speed and shooting. and this tempo, I think it's going to be a really fun offense to watch. So it's going to be a fun year, and I think we're going to put a lot of points on the board.
Let's do that over and over and over again, Pat Kilby. That will be fun. And by the way, that's attractive to recruits. It's an important thing to be aware of. All right, gang, that's it for today's show. Thanks so much for joining us here. Again, we'd love to hear your bold takes when we get to next week for Carolina season. So go ahead and be cooking those up and concocting them ahead of next Wednesday. If you haven't subscribed to the show, make sure to do so on video and audio, both YouTube and your favorite podcast listening platform. If you are on YouTube, go ahead and hit that bell notification as well, so that when we go live after the football game Saturday and then after the Johnson C. Smith exhibition on Sunday, you'll get notified and you can tap right on in. If you're not part of the Locked On Tar Heels Discord, baby, we would love to have you. You're missing out. It's free to join. The link's in the show notes. Come for the Tar Heels. Stay for the community, man. It's so great. And if you want to go even deeper, you can join the Locked On Tar Heels Insider Program, where you get to talk directly with me one-on-one through texting. It's a blast, and lots of other perks from that as well. In fact, there's some kind of insider news about the upcoming season that I'm going to share specifically about Locked On Tar Heels, actually probably here in the next little bit once I get off recording with Pac. So, man, just you want to make sure you're part of that. You guys know it. It's always a great day to be a Tar Heel. We're going to talk again tomorrow with Coach Rob. But until then, peace.